Hello and welcome back to the official YouTube channel of Anastasis Academy. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ananya B. Chatterjee, your VARC mentor. So guys, welcome to the second episode of Bibliophile, a series wherein we read together articles and essays across the web, and we try to work on our reading skills and try to improve our comprehension skills. So the selection for today is from Penguin India blog, and it is titled Understanding Tagore's Nationalism and Interpretation by Ram Guha, an expert. So in this article, we are going to talk about Tagore's brand of nationalism as interpreted by Ram Guha, who's an expert in the field. So let's get started. Rabindranath Tagore was born in 1861. He was the 14th child of Debendranath Tagore, head of the Brahmo Samaj. The Brahmo Samaj, I think it was spearheaded by Dayanand Saraswati, I guess. Their family house at Jora Shanko, it's in Kolkata, was a hive is like a beehive. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. So Jora Shako as a house was a hive of cultural and intellectual activity, and Tagore started writing at an early age. He was a prolific writer. What do you mean by a prolific writer? A writer who writes a lot in quantity, right? He was a prolific writer. His works include poems, novels, plays, short stories, essays, and songs. So guys, in this selection, we are talking about Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, who was a Nobel laureate, and he got the Nobel Prize for his collection of poems called Gitanjali. Late in his life, Tagore also took up painting, exhibiting in Moscow, Berlin, Paris, London, and New York. He died in 1941, so 6 years before India got independence. Born in Dehradun, so this is about Tagore. The first paragraph is giving a short intro to Tagore and how multifaceted he was, right? Born in Dehradun in 1958 and educated in Delhi and Calcutta, Ramchandra Guha pursued an academic career for 10 years before becoming a full-time writer. He was named one of the 100 most influential intellectuals in the world by Foreign Policy and Prospect magazine. So the second paragraph is introducing the critique, Ramchandra Guha. A short intro to Ramchandra Guha. So there is an author in the first paragraph whose life has been talked about, Tagore, and then there is in the second paragraph, we are talking about Guha, the critique. Here is an excerpt from the introduction of Tagore's Nationalism written by Guha. So clearly, so far we have been reading the italicized form of it, written by the blogger of Penguin India blog. And now we are going to come to an excerpt from the writing of Ramchandra Guha about Tagore. Okay, let's start. Why Tagore? Asked a brilliant young mathematician of me recently. Me here refers to Guha. He was referring to a newspaper column where I had spoken of Rabindranath Tagore, Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and B.R. Ambedkar as the four founders of modern India. So somebody asked Guha that, why did you include Tagore among the four founders of modern India? So the mathematician continues to say, I can see why you singled out the other three, said the mathematician. Gandhi led the freedom movement, so he deserves to be included. Nehru nurtured the infant Indian state, fair enough. Ambedkar helped write its constitution and gave dignity to the oppressed. So the mathematician could understand why the other three were a part of this list highlighted by Guha, but he wanted to know why he included Tagore also. But why Tagore? My questioner was no ordinary Indian. Now, more about the questioner. the third character in the narrative. So first it was Tagore, then it was Guha. Now there is this mathematician who's asking Guha why he included Tagore as a part of his narrative. So more about this person. He comes from a family of distinguished scholars and social reformers, the mathematician in question. Like his father and grandfather before him, he had been educated at a great Western university but came back to work in India. Like them, he is well read and widely traveled and yet deeply attached to his homeland, which apparently is India. He fluently speaks three Indian languages. If an Indian of his sensibility had to be convinced of Tagore's greatness or relevance, what then of all others? Now, the third paragraph here, as in the third paragraph of introduction, not chronologically, it is talking about the questioner who is the mathematician. Right. So this is about him. And then the author asks a rhetorical question. What does he ask? That so this person apparently who's asking this question, that why have you included Tagore in this list? This person apparently is a fairly well-read person, a well-traveled person, belongs to a very cultured family which is seeped in academia and social reforms. So if such a person has to be convinced about Tagore's contribution or Tagore's relevance or greatness, then what about the rest of the India? Where do we stand? According to who? According to Guha. Moving on. Tagore's reputation within India and outside it has suffered from his being made a parochial possession of one province, Bengal. Now, this is an interesting word here, parochial. First of all, let us talk about this. Parochial comes from parish, the church. In contemporary usage, the word parochial means old fashioned or very conservative or narrow, you know, chauvinistic in a sense. So I would chauvinistic, old fashioned. So Tagore's reputation within India and outside it has suffered from his being made a parochial possession of one province, Bengal. So that's been the old school way of thinking, that Tagore, Bengal, and that's it. It was in Bengal, he asserts, Guha asserts. It was in Bengal that he wrote his poems, novels, plays, songs, works that are widely read and regularly performed 7 decades after his death. The poet Subhash Mukhopadhyay recalls a time when the elite of Bengal fought among themselves to monopolize Tagore. They tried to seal off Tagore, cordoning him away from the hoi polloi. Hoi polloi is, so when you say cordoning him, it's about blocking an area. That this is mine, blocking an area. Hoi polloi is the chaos, the social cacophony, a mix of noise. Yes, from the bourgeois, from the lesser known people. So contextually, it means that. So he, another character that has been introduced is Subhash Mukhopadhyay, a poet being quoted by Guha in his expert about Tagore. He's saying that, well, the elite of Bengal, they fought amongst themselves that, Tagore belongs to us, Tagore belongs to us, like that. And they were trying to block Tagore or monopolize Tagore. Basically, by Tagore, they mean Tagore's philosophy, Tagore's work, so on and so forth. Right? Then he adds, who adds? Subhash Mukhopadhyay in this case. Then he adds, there was another trend serving the same purpose, but in a different way. In the name of ideology and as the sole representative of the masses, some tried to protect the proletariat from the bourgeois poet's harmful influence. So, this is important to understand. The word proletariat has Russian connotations. Proletariat is a word that was made common by the communist movement in Russia, the post-Marxist movement in Russia. It belonged to the working class. proletariats were the working class. And bourgeois is a French word. It means the middle class or the upper middle class, you can say. So he is saying that there was one trend that elites were trying to monopolize Tagore. That's one part of it. And then there was this other trend wherein self-proclaimed benefactors of proletariats who thought that they're fighting for the rights of the working class. They said that, we need to protect the downtrodden. We need to protect the working people from the harmful effects of the poets as in Tagore's influence, right? The Bengali communists, we were talking about proletariat, so communists had to come. The Bengali communists have since taken back their hostility to Tagore. So there is a shift in social perception over the past 7 decades. So earlier they were like, we have to protect the proletariats, the working class from the effect of Tagore. And now they have kind of withdrawn their hostility to Tagore. Now they quote his verses and sing his lyrics. Even the communists do that now. So he has transcended, Tagore has apparently transcended the barriers of class division post his death, you can say. And I think that it is a mark of greatness, at least the greatness of a work by any artist. So now they quote his verses and sing his lyrics with as much gusto. Gusto is energy and enthusiasm. Enthusiasm. As their bourgeois compatriots. Compatriots, basically citizens of the same nation, like you and I are compatriots. If you are uh, an Indian, we are compatriots. So now, after 70 years, apparently, the bourgeois people and the proletariats and the communists who back the proletariats, they sing the songs of Tagore with similar gusto. The hostility has kind of receded and died down. But he remains Tagore. He remains the property of his native heath alone. Heath is a piece of land which is not cultivated. Heath, basically a piece of land, right? But he remains the property of his native heath alone. He still belongs to Bengal. This geographical diminution of the man and his reputation has been commented upon by that other great world traveler and world citizen of Bengali extraction, the sitar player Ravi Shankar. So we have another person. So many characters are getting into the narrative. We had Tagore first, and then we had Ramchandra Guha, who is talking about Tagore in this excerpt. And then we had the mathematician who was asking the question to Ramchandra Guha. Then we had Subhash Mukhopadhyay, who had something to say about Tagore's acceptance into the social fabric being quoted by Guha. And now we have Ravi Shankar talking about him. But what does this sentence mean? This geographical diminution of the man and his reputation. Um, Geographical diminution, geographical you understand, but diminution is basically when you try to limit a person. Diminishing is reducing, right? When you try to diminish a person's prowess or person's impact or the person's influence based on the geography uh, of which he was the part, or against the backdrop of which he lived his life. uh, I mean, this is, if I might comment, because we are not reading for an RC right now, we can be subjective so that we can improve our reading skills and, interest in reading. This is a pretty tragic, I would say. So just the fact that, okay, so what Tagore is to Bengali literature, I think an analogy that I can find closely in English literature would be William Shakespeare. Sir William Shakespeare, right? So even as Indians, I had the opportunity to study English literature at one point in life as a part of my undergrad studies. So the kind of importance and significance given to Shakespeare, and how well we were supposed to understand his talents and his, writing skills and his writing forms and tools, it's very different from what happened to not just Tagore but many many Indian artists and authors. This geographical diminution is not something that only Tagore is subjected to. If you look carefully across history and across the states in India, we have had exceptionally talented authors and artists. But then not much is known about these people outside the province that they belonged to. So, yeah, right now we're talking about Tagore in specific. So, what Ravi Shankar had to say about sitar player Ravi Shankar, again, a world citizen, considered himself a world citizen, by the way, did not want to be bound by the boundaries of geography. In his autobiography, Ravi Shankar's autobiography, that is, the musician writes that being Bengali, of course, makes it natural for me to feel so moved by Tagore. Right. But I do feel that if he had been born in the West, he would now be as revered as Shakespeare and Goethe. Now, this is important. That's exactly what I was trying to tell you, that the relevance of it is based on the language. It's also interesting to note that I'm not sure how authentic or accurate this notion is, but apparently Bengali is considered the sweetest language in the world. I'm not saying it because I'm Bengali. I'm saying it, I have lived away from Bengal most of my life, right? Been in Delhi for the last, I don't know what, like 25 years now, right? So more than half my life. So, but yes, because again, because English is such a global language, so the literaries of English have gotten much more exposure as compared to other languages, no matter how sweet they sound and how beautiful they are, be it Urdu, be it Mandarin, be it Telugu, be it German, be it French is again considered there high up on the pedestal. But yeah, well, moving on. He is not as popular or well known worldwide as he should be, Ravi Shankar says. I'm sure he's talking from experience because we have known about him in the course of the passage that he's a very well traveled man. The Vishwa Bharati are guarding everything he did too jealously and not doing enough to let the entire world know of his greatness. Now, what is Vishwa Bharati? So, Vishwa Bharati is a university which was founded by Tagore and his family. It's in Shantiniketan, Bengal. He went there, I think, in 2017. So, Ravi Shankar contends that Vishwa Bharati as a university and as an intellectual bubble is trying to guard Tagore's work like it belongs to us. Something that the elites were anyway doing 70 years ago, you know. And they're not doing enough to let the entire world know of the greatness of this man's writing or whatever, writing or other art forms that he dabbled in. It happens, instead of making him more public, they're trying to protect him and monopolize him. Ravi Shankar compared Tagore to the German genius Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Goethe, again, is a very strong influence on English literature, Gothic literature. I mean, Goethe's ideology and Goethe's way of thinking, which often focused on the dark side of humanity. Um, it inspired not only literature but also fashion, Gothic fashion, punk look, and it inspired architecture, Gothic architecture. Literature, definitely Dracula, Transylvania, these are all kind of, one second, yeah. So again, a very very important character in the literature world. Why I'm saying English also, because although he was a German genius von Gogh, who is being compared to um, Tagore by Ravi Shankar, his influence could be felt very deeply in English literature by the likes of Frankenstein, the book written by Mary Shelley. It's kind of one of the first books in this genre, the dark side of humanity. Anyway, so before him had the critique Buddhadev Bose, another character. So what's the entire sentence? Ravi Shankar compared Tagore to the German genius Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. So before him had the critique Buddhadev Bose. Okay, so Buddhadev Bose also compared Tagore to the legendary author and thinker von Goethe. Both men, remarked Bose, participated in almost everything. So now we know that why Ravi Shankar and Bose were comparing Goethe and Tagore. Right. So the thing is, this sentence is important because starting with the pronoun both, attributed to both the authors, Tagore also, Goethe also. Both men, remarked Bose, participated in almost everything. So they were multi talented. They were not just authors. Certainly, no one since Goethe worked in so many different fields and did original things in so many of them. Tagore was a poet, a novelist, a playwright, a lyricist, a composer, an artist, a nationalist, if I may say. He had good days and bad, but at his best, he was outstanding in each of these fields. Right. So he dabbled in multiple art forms. That's the thing. Tagore's poems and stories are mostly set in Bengal. However, in his non-fiction, that is to say, in his letters, essays, talks, polemics. What do you mean by polemics? And when you write opinions and all. So dialogues, opinions. He wrote extensively on the relations between different cultures and countries of the world. Tagore notes Humayun Kabir was the first great Indian in recent times who went out on a cultural mission for restoring contacts and establish friendships with peoples of other countries without any immediate or specific educational, economic, political, or religious aim. This is interesting. This is interesting. So, why this is interesting is that there was a presumption prevalent back in the day that uh, if a known person is traveling abroad, it must be with an ulterior motive. Either he has an educational agenda in mind, or there must be some economic motive. There could be some political purpose that he wants to fulfill. There could be a religious aspect to his objective. है ना? तो ऐसा कुछ के बिना हुमायूं कबीर टेगोर नोट्स ही ट्रैवल्ड for what? There were a couple of things. Humayun Kabir traveled for cultural mission. Humayun Kabir traveled for cultural mission. Just 1 second. For cultural mission, restoring contacts, establishing friendships. So I don't think this was a very utility based travel that they were looking towards. It is just from a very humane level that they wanted to reestablish contacts with other parts of humanity across cultures, across borders. It is also remarkable that his cultural journeys were not confined to the Western world. He visited Europe, North America, but also Japan, China, Iran, Latin America, and Indochina. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay, so he traveled at length. That's what it is ending with. But when the passage started, The question now is, you can read Tagore's Nationalism. I think I read it back in 2008 or something. I was greatly moved by it, by the way. You can choose to agree, disagree, but it's a great read, I would say, especially in the times that we're living in when there is so many wrong and, you know, mm, biased definitions of nationalism going on. It's good to read a different perspective altogether on nationalism, especially, I mean, if I may give it some more credibility, especially from the author of our national anthem. Yeah. So that's there. Anyway, but the question now is, understanding Tagore's nationalism. In the course of the passage, we did not talk about nationalism only. Then how is it a relevant excerpt? And how is this title even justified? That's the question. Because in CAT, I'll tell you what, you get a lot of main idea questions, you get a lot of inference based questions, and you get a tone style question. So maybe, just maybe, this is not a CAT passage, right? But maybe when you say understanding Tagore's nationalism, you're talking about um, how his brand of nationalism was kind of based on humanity as a whole, as shown by, see, there are a couple of very important pointers. So first thing is that we saw that people who did not like him initially, who thought that he was problematic, the communists, they also started singing his songs in the later half of 20th century. We saw that he did travel at length, right, to other countries. We also saw that in the last paragraph, we also saw that Tagore was very open to talking about um, provinces other than Bengal. We can infer that his non-fiction here, his non-fiction, that is to say, in his letters, essays, talks, polemics, he wrote extensively on the relations between different cultures and countries of the world. So instead of, in the light of all this, we can, I won't say infer because that would require a lot of logical premises here, but we can kind of incline or towards the fact that Tagore was probably a world citizen. His idea of nationalism was not very confined to geographical borders. This much we can definitely see from the passage. We can gauge from the passage. Inference will be too strong a word because we need premises for that. As far as that's the main idea. The main idea of the passage, if you had to say it in one or two sentences, would be that Tagore was, according to Guha, that is, according to Ramchandra Guha, Rabindranath Tagore was a prolific author with multifaceted talents and often monopolized by the elites and his own clan in the course of the 20th century, probably not recognized as he should have been across the world for his contributions, and did dabble in a different way of looking at nationalism or humanity in general, wherein correspondences with different cultures are concerned. Um, as far as the style of writing is concerned, it's pretty straight cut descriptive. So the author has gone on to detail um, Ramchand Guha's way of writing, Ramchand Guha, what he thinks, why he thinks, is giving rationale behind it. Is a descriptive passage, pretty much. You know, and the purpose again to introduce us to Tagore's genius and to introduce the reader to the fact that Tagore did not get his due. So it's a brilliant passage. Again, a suggested reading would be the essay Nationalism by Tagore. If you don't want to read the entire thing, you can read excerpts from it. Penguin India blog does give you some interesting options sometimes. It's an alternative to Aeon and Smithsonian if you want to take a look, you can. So this is for episode 2, Bibliophile. Thank you very, very much for joining in, and leave in comments if you want me to take up any particular domain in future. And I'm going to see you soon. Take care and keep reading.